Okay, so we're going to talk about the priority order case review. Again, just a reminder, the Survivor Act mandates you to use your review team to do your priority order case review of, again, it's just the kits collected on or before January 1st, 2018. So, and the way the law reads, it says shall be completed as soon as practicable. I think that's just a fancy way of saying as soon as possible. Yeah, it has to be completed no later than March 18th of this year. So that's coming up pretty quick, guys. I mean, it's 2 months away. Again, there's always stuff going on that you get sidetracked. So again, if you haven't started, I highly recommend you get started on this tomorrow. And again, it's for the sexual assault kits, the pre-2018 sexual assault kits. Okay, so there are some kits that you're not going to submit for testing right now, at least at this time. So basically, those that are your anonymous kits, your Jane Doe kits. I didn't realize this. I guess in Fayetteville, we're pretty fortunate. I'd never seen or touched an anonymous kit in my life. We had something set up where the sheriff's office would just directly get it and bring it straight to law enforcement support services. There's a warehouse in Raleigh that houses all those. My understanding is that there are a lot of agencies in the state that do possess unreported kits or anonymous kits or Jane Doe kits, whatever you call it. They're basically, you got sexual assault kits where the victim did not file a police report. If you do have any of those, just make sure you get those sexual assault kits to law enforcement support services. If you need a contact for that, I'll get with you. I know somebody at one of the last trainings mentioned there was a little issue with them getting their kits. I checked with Susie Barker. She's the STEMS database manager. She admitted there was a glitch with anonymous kits being entered into STEMS. I don't know if that glitch has been resolved yet. She just said if you are having problems with anonymous kits, to get directly with her. And if you need me to facilitate that contact, just get with me, and I can even ask Susie for you if you're having issues with particular kits. Okay, so cases that have been designated as unfounded after the original law enforcement investigation, put those aside for now. That's going to be a separate case review and a separate, more thorough case review. So do not review unfounded cases yet. That's not going to be part of your priority order case review yet. Yeah, this one, I mean, I ran into this like one time in 5 years in Fayetteville. It's probably not one you're going to really run into, but it's part of the Survivor Act. It is addressed, so we do have to go over it here. So if you have a sexual assault kit where you had a criminal prosecution and the guy was convicted, the convicted person does not seek DNA testing. So remember, this is an untested sexual assault kit. So he's been prosecuted, convicted. He does not seek DNA testing. And if the suspect's profile is already in CODIS, it's already in that national database, then you do not need to test those kits. If you do run into a situation where you have a suspect wanting to have his sexual assault kit tested, somebody who's been convicted, a defendant who's already been convicted, just consult with your district attorney. Again, I only saw that happen once in 5 years, so that's going to be a rare circumstance for you. All right, so if you have any sexual assault kits that didn't have it in your jurisdiction, do not send those at this time. I know we had a few in Fayetteville. Basically, it's like a scenario where the victim went down to South Carolina for the weekend, got raped in South Carolina, came back home to Fayetteville, then went to the hospital and had the sexual assault kit done. And one of those, we tried to give this kit back to that agency. We tried very hard, and for whatever reason, it just kind of fell through, and we wound up with it in possession. If it falls through and you can't get it back to them, just go ahead and send it off. You'd think they'd want their kit back. It's their rape. It's in their jurisdiction. But if that doesn't pan out and you still have the kit, just send it off for DNA testing. And just to clarify this, because this is something I get asked about, why would we do this? Why bother doing this? So just to clarify this, so if you have a sexual assault kit, okay, so you got the criminal prosecution, you got the conviction, and the convicted person's DNA profile is not in that national DNA database, is not in CODIS, you will send off those sexual assault kits. So, I'm asked, well, why should we even bother doing this? The guy's been convicted, he's already served his time, he's not even on probation anymore. Why should we do this? Yeah, it's for case connectivity, to link cases. Just remember, your jurisdiction's known suspect rapist might be my jurisdiction's unknown suspect rapist. The only way we're going to link those together, everybody tests all their stuff, and we get those cases connected together. Yeah, if you need to verify someone has DNA in CODIS, use your CJ Leads account. If you don't have one of those, just get with Zach at the crime lab, or if you need me to help facilitate any connection with anybody at the lab, feel free to reach out. Yeah, if in doubt, and this applies to every single sexual assault kit you have, if you're in doubt as to whether somebody's DNA profile is in the national database, just send the kit off. And I'd say that for every single one of your sexual assault kits in your inventory. If you're in doubt, just send it. I mean, what's the worst they're going to do? Not take it? Okay, so now we're going to talk about that second category of sexual assault kits, your warm cases. So those completed from January 2nd, 2018 to June 30th of 2019. Again, per the Survivor Act, you guys get those sent to the crime lab as soon as possible. Don't worry about the priority order case review on these. Just get them all sent off. Use your Forensic Advantage portal to send these in. There's a different direction or instruction for the cold cases, so just use your Forensic Advantage portal for these. One thing about Forensic Advantage, I'm going to tell you guys, I highly recommend that at least one person and possibly multiple people in your agency, you need to get every single Forensic Advantage report to ensure that no cases slip through the cracks. A lot of those cases, I know in Fayetteville, the SVU lieutenant, my adult sex crime sergeant, and then the forensics manager, who's a civilian position. All three of us got every single Forensic Advantage report from the lab. And a lot of them were our cases, but a lot of them, if it was a robbery case or a burglary case, I just forwarded it to that unit supervisor, but we were making sure cases weren't slipping through the cracks. Like you remember that list of cases I read to you this morning, that's when I really looked into it and delved into the matter. It was basically just people were assuming other people in my department got those lab reports, and we had all these CODIS hits slipping through the cracks. There were 6, there's more than, we probably had at least a dozen, others just arrests weren't made for whatever reason. But I'm not even satisfied I found all of them. I think I've read about every rape report Fayetteville wrote, but I know there's at least a dozen CODIS hits that slipped through the cracks in Fayetteville. That's because people were assuming others were getting those reports. So if somebody in your agency gets every single one of those FA reports, you're going to make sure that's not. It's extra work on somebody. Yeah, it was extra work on me. It took me 15 seconds to open a report and see what unit it goes to. So to ensure these cases don't slip through the cracks, like a lot of them already have once before, I highly recommend somebody in your agency is doing that. Again, as we said, it's not mandatory to do your case review for these warm cases, but it is a best practice. It is recommended. Okay, so now the third category of sexual assault kits. It's what I call the current cases, those that are completed on or after July 1st, 2019. So again, per the Survivor Act, you've got to get those, and this is law enforcement, get those to the crime lab within 45 days of taking custody of it. And again, not mandatory to do the case review, but it is a best practice recommendation. After, and again, for the warm cases and the current cases, we're talking about after the DNA testing is done. Don't worry about priority order case review for these cases. Okay, so this was like a huge feat of PowerPointage for me to create this chart. I hope it kind of simplifies it. Again, the Survivor Act, if you sit there and actually read it, it is a tad bit confusing, and there are different categories of sexual assault kits. So just keep in mind, you got on the top, that top line, you got your 3 categories of sexual assault kits, like I affectionately call them your cold cases, your warm cases, and your current cases. Then the second line is the MDT case review is required. For the cold cases, it is required per the Survivor Act, and that's, again, that priority order case review prior to submitting to the crime lab. And for your warm cases and current cases, the MDT case review is not mandatory, but it's recommended after the sexual assault kit is tested for DNA. So difference between those categories there. And then that bottom line, basically send the sexual assault kits for DNA testing. For the cold cases, those that are eligible after that mandated priority order case review. For the warm cases, you send your sexual assault kits to the crime lab as soon as practicable, as soon as possible, remember. And then for the current cases, send to the crime lab within 45 days of taking custody. So I hope that kind of sort of simplifies it. Again, there's 3 different categories, have 3 different sets of requirements. So with the priority order case review, so this is, I'm going to just read a tad bit here, so just bear with me. This comes straight from the Survivor Act. This is straight what our politicians want us to do. So the review required under this subdivision shall consider each of the following factors, and shall, so remember that's mandatory, when determining your priority order case review. Investigative and evidentiary value of the individual case, CODIS potential to link profiles, identify possible serial offenders, potential for victim participation, 404B evidence, age and health of victim, potential for exculpatory value for a convicted person, any other factor the review team deems to be relevant. That's like a lot of stuff to go over for every single case you have in your inventory. And again, I really think they meant well. I really do appreciate what the politicians did. Don't go calling your politician buddy snitching on me here. Just give me a chance to explain myself. I think I've got a workaround where you can still streamline the process and be consistent with this mandate. So just bear with me. do some simple math first just to kind of help prove my point. So remember I said in Fayetteville in the fall of 2015 we were awarded funding from the SAKI grant, the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative grant. Our backlog was actually 637. So we had 637 untested sexual assault kits in our inventory. So just think, so if the Survivor Act were enacted then, and I'm forming my review team, my MDT, and I'm getting everybody together, let's say we're going to go through this and maybe take 10 minutes to cover each case. Does that sound pretty reasonable? It's moving along, right? So that means we can cover 6 an hour, 100 hours, 2.5 weeks. Come on, no, that's not going to happen. I was kind of figuring out, I don't think, and Kelly Taylor was on our working group team, I don't think me and Kelly Taylor are going to be available for 100 hours the same time for the rest of our lives, much less by March 18th. So even like a smaller agency, if you have 50 kits, it's 8 full hours with no breaks. Even if you're doing that 6 an hour, it's just a lot. You think about these review teams, and I think somebody over here mentioned it. It's hard getting these people together. You got a lot of busy people, and a lot of times they're not even they're not in the same building. Sometimes they're not even in the same city or the same county. Trying to get everybody together, you got different supervisors, and it's tough getting people together to do this. I get it. Every agency has a lot of things going on, and there's always something more important that comes up, where everything gets pushed to the wayside. So I get it. So we got to figure out a way to streamline this, but yet be consistent with the Survivor Act. And again, I can't say it enough. I can't stress it enough. This priority order case review, you've got to streamline it. You got to get through it as soon as possible. March is going to be here really quick. Yeah, and I know from personal experience with our backlog reduction project, there's going to be backlogs every step of the way with testing your kits, with your CODIS uploads, with investigating cases. I know the day I retired, I left my successor 4 dozen pending CODIS hit cases to investigate. Victim notifications, the day I retired, I dumped 200 victim notifications on my successor's desk for him to get on. And then certainly prosecutions. You don't need another backlog on the front end of something that is time mandated per the Survivor Act. You got to get through this priority order case review as soon as possible. Yeah, so just keep in mind, you can slow it down. At some point in the process, you will be able to slow it down. Just keep in mind, for this priority order case review, you're sending all these kits off for testing anyway, and you got a hard deadline for that. But you'll be able to slow it down later on with your team. For the unfounded case review, you can slow it down a little bit. After you get the testing results and you're doing your victim notifications and your working cases, you can slow it down a little bit. There are no mandated timelines for anything else. The only mandated timeline you have is for this priority order case review. So how are you going to do that? So again, this is a way I think I would have done it if the Survivor Act were enacted in 2015 in Fayetteville. And this first priority order, this is the order we used in Fayetteville for our backlog reduction project. And again, this is after you've got your anonymous kits are sent off to LESS, they're off the table, and your unfounded cases are not a part of this review. So every other rape report you have in your inventory is going to be in one of these categories here. Every single report you have will be in one of these 6 categories. Got your serial rape cases, right? That's number 1 priority. Number 2 priority, just like a singular stranger rape case. Number 3 priority, your DV cases. I know in Fayetteville we chose to bump that up a tad bit just because of the extra emphasis placed on those cases in the state and nationwide. We made that our 3rd level priority. Number 4, the acquaintance or the non-stranger rape cases where you might not know the suspect's full name. For us, this was typically maybe like a social media hookup or like a bar hookup where it might only have a screen name or a first name or a nickname. Number 5 priority, your non-stranger rapes, and you can properly identify the suspect. And then number 6 was kind of your catch-all. You're not sure if a sexual assault occurred. For us, these were typically maybe possible alcohol or drug-facilitated rapes. And then even for us, like our really older cases from the 80s, a lot of cases from the 80s and 90s, we just didn't have a case file. We had no reports, no nothing, didn't know what happened until after we got the DNA testing results back and we could see the nurse's notes, which are fabulous, by the way. I'll go into that later. Thank you. They're like gold. So anything else, that's kind of your catch-all category, right? Those 6 categories covers everything, covers every possible rape scenario you can think of. And it's that easy. There's really no debate in any of those. Those are pretty clear as you're reviewing reports. Yeah, it's going to go in one of those 6. There's no debate in it. You're not going to waste a lot of time putting it in one of these categories. All right, so if you want to stream, and if I could go back though, I think I would do this. If you want to streamline it even more, and I think Montgomery County, Maryland used something similar to this just so they can get through their cases as quickly as possible. 3 categories. Unknown suspect cases, known suspect cases, not sure cases. Boom. Every single rape report you have in your agency will fall into one of those 3 categories. And remember, you're sending all these kits off anyway for DNA testing. You don't need to waste a lot of time with a priority order because they're all going to be sent off anyway. And what I'm learning from the crime lab, if your inventory is under 100 anyway, they'll take all your kits in one batch anyway. So don't waste a lot of time with this priority order. Just get through it, get the cases submitted. If I could go back, this is what I would use. Okay, yeah, so you might run into a kit that might fall into more than one category. I think the example I have, you might have a stranger rape case, but you link it to another stranger rape case after further reviews, and you bump it up from priority order 2 to priority order 1. Just go with the higher priority order, right? Makes sense. And then, yeah, as you're reviewing more cases, you might also bump up a priority order after you're reviewing more cases. I think the best example I can think of, if you have an acquaintance rape case or a non-stranger rape case, and you see this dude's name keep coming up in non-stranger rape cases, that's not going to be priority order 5. He's a serial rapist. Bump him up to number 1. We need to put him in jail. Get all those kits sent off on your first batch. Okay, so what about the process, the priority order case review process? Okay, and again, this is just a thought, a recommendation. I think this is probably the way I would do it if I had to do this in 2015 with our cases. But first off, law enforcement, make a copy. I'm a little old school. I guess if you're smart enough to do it, PDF files or whatever, where that's pretty. I need a report. I need to hold a report. So I'm sorry. So print out 1 copy of every report. Don't print out. You don't need 5 copies of every report. And I know that thousands of pages. I know my last bureau major, he was like the paper Nazi. I had to wait till he was off before I could use the printer sometimes. So I get how papers, at a premium now, and you don't want to use up your printer and all that stuff. So, but I would recommend make 1 copy of every report. Create your little case file, and because you'll be getting the lab reports later, so you'll want to have a case file on hand. And make sure you probably want to go ahead, law enforcement, kind of explain to those who aren't used to reading reports. Your prosecutors will be all right, but maybe like your SANEs and your advocates, just explain to them what they need to be reading. I don't think you need to read the whole report. Well, just read that initial officer statement. I think in Fayetteville, that was our page 3 was the victim statement, the paraphrase statement that the officer would write. Just point them out with it. Hey, just read the victim statement here on page 3. That's all you need to read, and the priority order will be determined from that. Just make sure you make that process clear, so they don't need to read page 1, like with the name and all that stuff on there. Yeah. So also, you'll have your reports printed out. Create like a master sheet with all your case numbers on there, and then person can put their name on there, and then they write down the priority order. Just for case number 1, 1, 2, or 3. Case number 2, 1, 2, or 3, and so on. Yeah, and again, like I said, just 1 copy of the report. Everybody starts with 1 report. Everybody's going to start with a different report. You read your report, rank it, pass it to the next person, get the next report, read it, rank it, pass it to the next person. It's as easy as that. Okay, and just if you can get all your cases done in 1 meeting, yes, great. You probably need more than 1 meeting, depending on your backlogs. Yeah, so just have a designated team leader or case review leader or whatever. Typically it might be law enforcement, but somebody needs to have a master sheet, right? Keep that in mind. Have a master sheet with each case number and then what each person on your team ranked it. If you have people that disagree, if say it's priority order 1, you say 2, you say 2. No, you don't need to waste a lot of time arguing it. Just the majority rules, and if there's a tie, the leader will break it. Just keep in mind, you're going to test all these kits anyway. You don't need to waste a lot of time. I know it's funny. So our state of North Carolina Psaki working group, we met in Raleigh a few months ago, and we were pretending like we were a review team. We reviewed 2 cases, and it took us over an hour to review 2 cases. And I'm like, man, this cannot. We'd still be there reviewing cases. If we took that long in Fayetteville, I wouldn't be able to retire. We'd still be addressing our backlog and reviewing cases. Yeah, that was a little too. You got to get through these cases. Get through them. They're all going to be sent off anyway. Get through them, rank them, go on to the next one. Okay, so and the way I want this to read, it might not read that way particularly, but basically, if you're going to have to send, if you have under 100 or under 50, it's sounding like the state crime lab will accept all of those in 1 batch, right? Send them all in 1 batch. But if you're only comfortable sending 10 or 20 at a time, if you feel that's all you can handle as far as notifications or investigations, fine, just send 10 or 20 at a time. Just what I would recommend, if you're going to have a cutoff though, if you're going to have to send more than 1 batch of kits, just send priority order level 1, oldest and newest, priority order level 2, oldest and newest, priority order 3, oldest and newest. Basically, the tiebreaker will be when it occurred, oldest and newest. And this is important. If you don't have this, make sure you get this email address. So when you're done with your priority order case review, don't send a bunch of kits to the crime lab. Don't log on Forensic Advantage. Don't show up at their doorstep with a box full of sexual assault kits. You have to email this email address, sak@ncdoj.gov. Again, this is for your mandated priority order case review, your pre-2018 kits. You have to email that email address and request further direction. Do not send your kits off until you hear back. That's the step. When you finish your priority order case review, email that email address, tell them you're done, and wait for further direction. Yeah, they do not want a bunch of kits just showing up at their lab. Okay, yeah, this is pretty cool. Well, again, this isn't, but just a reminder, it has to be done by March 18th. This is pretty good. This is what basically what we did in Fayetteville. So you don't have to, if you got hundreds and hundreds, or even if you have 50 and you really aren't comfortable doing all 50 at once, you can break it up. You can break it up into phases. Basically, I call it, just do a modified forklift approach. Again, this is what we did in Fayetteville with our backlog. And basically, the example would be, and again, I use the example of 50, but if you're only comfortable doing 10 or 20 at a time and you have a smaller caseload, that's fine. So basically, just take your 50 sexual assault kits, do your priority order case review, and send them off. Take your next batch of 50, do your priority order case review, send them off. I'd recommend that if you plan on doing more than one batch. And so Research Triangle International, that is our SAKI Training and Technical Assistance Team, and this is a document they created. I think we're going to send out documents to folks eventually, and this will be one, I think, once review process and all that gets done. If you really do, now, this is just my recommendation. If it was me, I would get through this priority order case review quick, because I know that, that 90 days or 60 days now or whatever it is, that's going to come up quick. If you want to take a more structured approach, if you want to slow it down a little and be like really super extra thorough just because you like being really super extra thorough, RTI has created a document that kind of, if you do want to slow it down and be more thorough, RTI has created a document as far as doing the priority order case review. And again, we'll be glad to get that to you. If you want to reach out to me, I'll get it to you. And we might be mass blasting it anyway. But if you really think you want to be a little more thorough than what I'm recommending, please get with me. We have some resources that can help you with that. Okay, so I hope none of you called your politician buddies and snitched on me and got me fired from Mr. Stein. So let's go back to their mandate here. Remember the one that I thought I'd still be working for Fayetteville if I had to do this for every case in Fayetteville. All right, so here's what they're requiring. Just bear with me, see if you agree with me on this. We'll do it one at a time. Okay, so the investigative and evidentiary value of each individual case. So, I mean, aren't all sexual assault kits relevant to all sexual assault cases? I mean, the crime scene's the body, your evidence is collected from the body. So we have to test all of these sexual assault kits because they're all relevant to every case. So we got that one covered. All right, CODIS potential to link profiles and identify possible serial offenders. So, I mean, like I told you, I've read about every rape report Fayetteville wrote going back to the 80s, and I've pretty much come to the conclusion that all rapists are serial rapists, right? All rapists are serial rapists. The only way we're going to find out, though, is by sending all of our sexual assault kits off and linking cases together. So, boom, we got letter B covered. Potential for victim participation in the investigation and prosecution. Yeah, I love this one. Whether this report was filed 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years ago, at some point the victim cooperated. She sat down with somebody from your department and gave a statement, right? And maybe even more than one statement. There might have been an officer statement, a detective statement, follow-up interviews. And more importantly, did they not, you have a sexual assault kit for this, right? I mean, so did they not go sit in a hospital room with that same nurse for 4 to 6 hours, maybe even longer, and cooperate with, and often we're asking them to do this. So did they not cooperate back then pretty extensively, it sounds like, right? Even if at some point during the original investigation, for whatever reason, they decided not to move forward. Several years later now, they might have a change of heart. We ran into that a lot where they just weren't ready back then. I know it could go both ways, but they weren't ready back then, but we reach out to them now and they're 100% all in. So, but the proper time to do that is after you test the sexual assault kit for DNA. So we got that one covered. Good there. Yeah, 404B evidence. Yeah, so you can go back to letter B on this. As all rapists are serial rapists anyway, the only way we're going to find it out is send all of our sexual assault kits off, get them linked together. Yeah, great thing with that Willie Pearl Mack story. So yeah, it was So like I said, remember we charged him with one, the sheriff's office charged him with one current rape, so he's sitting in jail. But as we're getting all these CODIS hits, it's really cool. It's like Christmas in July almost. We're getting all these CODIS hits and charged him with other charges. What the district attorney did, she was pretty smart about it. So she just tried one of the cases, but she had a 404B hearing prior to that and brought back like all the victims from the other cases for 404B hearing. But she wouldn't have known that if we hadn't have tested all of our sexual assault kits and keep getting hits to old slick Willie Pearl Mac. So we got that covered. Age and health of victim. Yeah, so what we found in Fayetteville, I think there needs to be, if anything, there needs to be a sense of urgency with your older cases, and you need to get those in as soon as possible. With our Saki project, we did have a priority order for our kits originally. We did have the one with 6 categories. But what we quickly found, and if you remember, we had our little controversy where we had destroyed over 300 sexual assault kits. And this is all going on at the same time. Our backlog reduction project and our disposed of sexual assault kit project. After Chief Medlock announced that in September 2015, the same month we got the grant, he ordered all of those cases to be reopened, all the destroyed sexual assault kit cases. So we reopened all those cases. We reached out to all those victims to let them know and to offer to reopen the case, to reinvestigate it. So what we were quickly finding, this literally hundreds, it was over 300 for the disposed of sexual assault kits and over 600 for our backlog. So we're talking about 1,000 victims that we're trying to reach out to. Literally dozens and dozens of them were turning out to be dead. We found that with the older cases. So we kind of shifted gears halfway through our project, and we threw out our priority order and just tested oldest and newest regardless of the circumstances, because we were finding that, and really it awakened us to realize there needs to be a sense of urgency with these older cases. So yeah, that is something you need to take into account. But I think what you need to do is you need to have a sense of urgency for any of your like 80s and 90s cases. You need to get those sent off ASAP, I think, regardless of the circumstances, because you're going to potentially miss out. Yeah, just one thing on that. Yeah, I'm glad Kelly used that phrase. What was it again? The medical hearsay exception. Okay, because I would have never thought of that if you hadn't mentioned it. So just keep in mind also with these older cases, though, we were able to charge 3 of our rape cases where the victim was deceased. But of course, we consulted with our district attorney first. But basically with that medical hearsay exception that the nurses have, it was those gold insane reports, man. Even these like old reports, these nurses' notes were like gold. And basically we were told with those cases, as long as we can track down the sane nurse and or the doctor who wrote the notes, that they can testify in court to those notes. And I'm going to say 100% of the time, typically, those nurses' notes are better than officer reports, 100% of the time. So yeah, three circumstances. We had deceased victims, but we were able to track down the sane nurse. They showed them their nurses' notes, and they remembered them. They were good. They were good to go, and we charged. So just keep that in mind when you're researching these older cases too. Yeah, potential for exculpatory value of convicted person. We covered that protocol. That's going to be rare anyway. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's there. If it does happen, it's covered. The law's covering that. And then any other factor the review team deems to be relevant, and that's your recommended priority order. That's it. That's relevant. That's the most relevant thing, is what you decide to do with these cases, how you decide to test them. So we're covered, right? I'm not going to get in trouble. You're covered. I think that's the way to streamline it and be consistent with their mandate. So yeah, just one other last thing about the priority order case review before we move on to the unfounded cases. I get asked this sometimes, like, hey, do we really need to test all of these sexual assault kits? I can understand, yeah, we need to test the stranger rape kits, right? I get that, because those are important, right? But why do we need to test the kits where it's alcohol facilitated, we don't really even know what happened? Why do we need to test the ones where the victim's boyfriend raped her and she didn't want to press charges? Why do we need to test the cases where prostitutes are victims or crackheads as victims? I don't get it. Why do we need to test those? Well, it's all about connecting those cases, right? And I'll tell you one thing about prostitutes. I charged a guy, actually I did do some good work in the 2000s. I charged a guy in 2000 with raping 4 prostitutes in downtown Fayetteville, and he got 19 years in prison. Just unbelievable, yeah. Prostitutes can be raped, okay? They could be back then, they can be now, they could be back in the 90s, so prostitutes can be raped. As far as crackheads or women living vulnerable lifestyles, the poster child for that is my boy Willie Pearl Mac, because he was not the rapist jumping out of the bushes, raping the soccer mom who was doing her morning run. He's raping women with alcohol abuse problems, he's raping women with drug abuse problems. He's raping women with homeless issues. He's raping women with mental health issues. All those cases alone, yeah, they're piece of crap cases, to put it bluntly. They're hard cases, but we test all our evidence. We're connecting all these cases together, and it goes from being a he said, she said case to a he said, they said case, and he's sitting in prison for the rest of his life, and he's still got 4 more trials pending. So that's why we're testing these cases. Again, it goes back to Willie Pearl Mac, and there's Willie Pearl Macs in every jurisdiction in the state, I guarantee. You just don't know about it, and they're not going to be the pretty cases. If you're waiting around, I hear this phrase, low-hanging fruit, and I use it, okay? I'm not bashing anybody who uses it, but I think in the context of the Survivor Act, when I hear it, I'm often thinking, well, hey, that means you think some rapes are more important than others, and you're minimizing some rapes and putting some rapes over others. But, again, Willie Pearl Mac's the perfect example of that. If we'd have minimized all his cases years later, he'd still be out there raping women. And if you're going to wait around for that low-hanging fruit, pretty much the tree's going to die, and you're letting guys like Willie Pearl Mac continue to rape. So just get on all these cases, get all your kits tested. You're going to be surprised and pleasantly surprised at the results.